Bitcoin today is around 44,000 per Bitcoin. We see that scaling to $1 million by 2030 or more. For all kinds of reasons, not just store of value, but institutional investors, insurance policies that high net worth individuals take out so that their wealth won't be confiscated, like we're seeing more and more often these days, and a substitute for money in emerging markets where they can't trust their monetary regimes or their fiscal regimes. So we see an incredible number of use cases, and we think Bitcoin will be leading the charge in many.
My outlook is very long term, and the reason I say do not sell your Bitcoin is because if I look back at my life as an investor, the things that I regret are whenever there's anxiety in the market and you panic sell and then you never buy back in, you regret that. And the second thing you always regret is you wish you bought more. Bitcoin represents the dominant digital property network of the 21st century. It's a very simple idea. Take the money you want to give to your grandchildren, convert it to Bitcoin, put it in cold storage and wait. Let the rest of the world do the work, and you'll be the beneficiary of all the intelligent people, no matter where they might be in the world. You'll be the beneficiary of all their work with doing nothing else.
So if you look over a really, really long time period, what you find is that Bitcoin is a non-correlated asset, that it has been a fantastic safe haven, and it has served as an inflation hedge. But the thing that people don't realize about inflation is that if you use that as kind of one aspect, investors don't wait for the inflation to show up to move their assets. And so now what I think the big question is what do people think will happen in the future? Do they believe inflation will continue to go higher, or do they actually think it will subside, given that there's going to be a base effect, and also you're going to get the Fed policy changes where they're going to increase interest rates? But I do think that Bitcoin has proven to be the best inflation hedge in the world. I think that there are other inflation hedges that you could have allocated to. You could have allocated to real estate. You could have allocated to stocks. You could have done a bunch of other stuff, but Bitcoin was the best. And then lastly, I think the correlation, that's just a math equation. And in short periods of time, we've definitely seen high correlations, but you see that in liquidity crisis. You see that in certain moments where people push out on a risk curve. But over a really, really long period of time, 5, 10 years, correlations are low, Sharpe ratios are high, and Bitcoin tends to be a really good asset to put into a portfolio to have all the impacts that institutional investors want.
Bitcoin has historically been thought of as a hedge against inflation, as a digital gold, if you will. And I think that the interest level is going to rise as people do seek alternatives in terms of how to store value, because people know if you just have a bank account full of money, unfortunately that's losing value right now unless you're getting paid above the rate of inflation, which is, what, 7% nowadays, something like that. And the last I checked, savings accounts were still only paying 1 or 2% max.
What we found in our survey recently is that the surprising things are there, but there are unsurprising things. Like about 45% of them feel that inflation is something to be concerned about, which makes sense, right, in the environment that we're in right now. And they're wary of some of the impact of inflation can have on their investing. They're also worried about 50% of them are worried about what happens in the geopolitical landscape and how that could impact. But their number one concern is inflation. What's interesting though is there's an element of you think, that such an environment could make people sort of shy away and go away. And actually they say this year, 30+% of them believe they're going to invest more.